Surrendered Boko Haram members in Borno and killings in the plateau dominate discussions as governors of both states visit President Buhari.
National Security Advisor vows to end alliance between secessionist groups in Nigeria and Cameroon.
The evolving crisis in the PDP and its journey to the courts.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on the de-radicalization of repentant Boko Haram terrorists.
Boko Haram can be traced to 2002 in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, when a sect formed by Mohammed Yusuf evolved into the current insurgent group and gradually escalated, affecting countries including Nigeria, the Republic of Chad, Niger, and Cameroon, have over time provided some response and developed strategies to address the carnage perpetrated by these insurgents.
Well, Nigeria inaugurated the Operation Safe Corridor in 2016 to rehabilitate low-risk repentant Boko Haram terrorists with the intention of reintegrating them into society. Now, this is the first attempt at de-radicalizing the terrorists, and it met with stiff opposition from their victims and other concerned persons in the country.
And recently, the media reported stories on the surrender of droves of Boko Haram fighters, with many describing it as a sign that Nigerian troops have decimated the group, though some persons are, however, expressing concerns that government should tread with caution.
Now, Operation Safe Corridor, that's the country's counterinsurgency program, has so far produced a number of former insurgents with certificates confirming their psychological normalcy before reintegrating them into their communities. Now, over 2,600 terrorists are reported to have so far surrendered, but many have raised questions over the program's ability to adequately de-radicalize this latest crop of repentant Boko Haram fighters who are currently seeking pardon for their crimes.
Reports have also indicated intense suspicion on the part of communities for these ex-fighters who have even been attacked in their reintegrated locations. These reactions have left a trail of questions on how the victims of these fighters can coexist with them and how displaced persons from attacks by these fighters can cope in IDP camps while their attackers walk free.
Well, there have been suggestions from persons such as the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, for a national policy on the matter, as well as the Information and Cultural Minister indicating that former Boko Haram fighters will be treated as prisoners of war.
Other concerned parties insist that input from those affected by insurgency must be prioritized by government, while direct victims of Boko Haram must be counseled to enable them accept the principle of dialogue and support the process. They also insist that these persons and communities must understand and accept the de-radicalization program to make it a success.
Well, the de-radicalization of repentant Boko Haram terrorists is our focus in our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today, on which note we'd like to welcome you to this transmission of the program. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. As always, we are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA.
And I am Kieran Umar. I also join Kingsley in welcoming you to the program today. And just like he indicated, we're live in our Abuja studios, the nation's capital here in Abuja. All right, now we're going to bring you our usual complimentary segments in the course of the package. Of course, we have a newspaper review, business news, sports, and of course, foreign news. For now, let's bring in our colleague, Musbao Danwahab, who has the morning news highlights. Good morning, Wahab.
Very good morning, Kirian and Kingsley is getting wet in the Federal Capital Territory this morning. Now let's take the news. President Muhammad Buhari has promised to provide the desired leadership and support towards effectively addressing the prevailing challenges associated with reported mass surrender by terrorists and insurgents in the Northeast Theater of Operations. Governor Babagana Humara Zulum of Borno State extracted the president's commitment at a strategic engagement on the new development, which he described as fulfilling and reassuring.
To have a wider consultations with the victims themselves, the traditional rulers, and the generality of the people of Borno State, the major stakeholders, including the Nigerian Army, the civilian JTF, and others, so that we can come up with far-reaching recommendations to ensure amicable resolution of this issue. And the Mr. President has given my humble self and the people of Borno State the assurances of his continued support in this direction.
Similarly, Governor Simon Bako Lalong of Plateau State has formally briefed President Muhammad Buhari on the recent farmers-herders conflict in Basa local government area of the state, as well as the killing of travelers in Jos, assuring him that peace and stability have been restored. The governor, however, made it clear to journalists that all those found to have compromised efforts at maintaining peace and security in the state will not escape justice.
I want to thank Mr. President for the deployment of additional forces in Plateau State. Right now, I will say they are working, diligently working. We must fish out the perpetrators. Both the one in Basa and the one that happened with the travelers. And not only that, we are even reviewing some of them that had done it before in order to ensure that we have security on the plateau.
The National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Munguno, is raising security concerns over emerging secessionist groups in Nigeria seeking alliance with similar groups in Cameroon to destabilize both countries. This was at the 8th session of the Cameroon-Nigeria Trans-Border Security Committee meeting holding in Abuja.
To ensure that any real or perceived challenge or attempt to form any alliances between secessionist groups in Nigeria and Cameroon are decisively dealt with.
Search and rescue operations have been intensified for the army officer abducted by bandits following the attack on Nigerian Defense Academy, NTA, Kaduna, where 2 officers were reportedly killed. Suleiman Abdullahi Regachikun report that normal activities are ongoing in and around the academy as well as military training unhindered. It was revealed that the attack occurred at a residential area within the academy. The report also indicates that the personnel of 1 Division, Nigerian Army, in collaboration with personnel of Air Training Command of the Nigerian Air Force, are on top of the situation of rescuing the abducted personnel.
Available to us revealed that the cadets are going about their normal academic activities as well as military training within the academy unhindered. Security personnel of 1 Division Nigerian Army in collaboration with security personnel of the Air Training Command, Nigerian Air Force, are on top of the situation to track the perpetrators of this act.
And the nation's fight against insecurity would be easier to win if communities cooperate with the government by providing actionable intelligence on criminals and their hideouts. The governor of Katsina State, Aminu Bello Masari, made the observation during a visit to the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in Abuja.
Citizens and the community involvement is necessary in order to win this fight against bandits. We in Katsina, we are working with the police and the other security agencies. We are training vigilantes in the simple rudiments of holding and managing firearms.
And away from insecurity, as part of the Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed's engagement in Washington, D.C., United States, met with some U.S.-based think tank organizations who have the capacity to influence global policies and help nations around the world address their peculiar challenges.
The most important takeaways is the offer by His Excellency that I should come back here to address a wider, cross-section of opinion leaders and opinion molders.
And now from the political arena, reactions have begun to trail the court ruling that granted an interim order restraining the national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Uche Secondus, from parading himself or acting as the national chairman of the party. The deputy chairman, north of the party, Senator Suleiman Nazif, says the National Working Committee of the party has called for a meeting this Friday, 27th of August, to deliberate on matters affecting the party. He claims to have taken over the affairs of the party following the absence of his counterpart from the south, Yomi Akinwumi.
Any meeting in the last 9 to 10 months, as far as NWC is concerned, he has not been in communication with any member of the NWC for the last 10 months. And in that regard, I have taken over as spelled out by the Constitution in the absence of all other chairmen.
The federal government has expressed concerns over the alarming rate of cholera outbreak, which has claimed more than 900 lives so far.
Keeping the environment clean, ensuring the use of clean and safe water, washing hands regularly with soap and running water, especially at critical moments such as after using the toilet. Also avoiding open defecation, cooking food well, keeping it covered before eating.
Meanwhile, the rates of COVID-19 infection remains very high, with 655 new cases recorded in the last 24 hours. In the latest figures released by the NCDC, Lagos still maintains the lead with 288 new cases, followed by Rivers State with 188, then Oyo with 64, Akwa Ibom with 31, FCT 28, Ekiti 21, Edo 17, Bayelsa 11, and Kaduna with 7 new cases. Now, Nigeria has a total of 188,243 confirmed cases, out of which 169,035 were treated and discharged. 2,281 have so far died of the virus. And that's the morning news. There will be more in the course of the day, but our program will now continue with Kingsley and Kieran in just a moment. Stay with us.
Firstly, safety. I will ensure that my family members and loved ones are safe.
I will try as much as possible not to get involved.
We should call the nearest police station.
I will alert my family, my friends, my neighbors in that vicinity that this is what is happening.
Who wins the star prize of 1 million naira in the ongoing Peace Nigeria Challenge, powered by Ask Nigeria, in partnership with National Council for Arts and Culture, NCAC, Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, and Star Times. Unity Challenge Nigeria, stronger together.
Babe? Hey!
Hi.
It's hard to live when you are all alone.
Hi. So, my card isn't working. Hello?
All I hear with the...
Good morning, I'm really sorry I'm late.
Oh.
Where are you guys going? Hello? Can anybody hear me? Can you see?
life as it should be.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Admission forms into NTA Television College JOS 2021-2022 2-year National Innovation Diploma Program are on sale from 9th of August to 29th of October 2021. Candidates who wish to apply for admission must have 5 O-level credits in relevant subjects including English language and mathematics. The courses available for application include film and television production, broadcast journalism, and television engineering technology. The admission forms can be obtained at NTA Television College or any NTA station nationwide at the cost of 7,500 naira only. Payment for the form is through remitter platform only in favor of NTA Television College. For more inquiries, please call 0803 079 5335 or 0806 980 9807. Management Announcer.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. It's time for business news, and here is our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed Usman, recently appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on Finance to intimate members on the 2022 to 2024 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. The minister also gave an insight into the performance of the 2021 budget. Besides stating the debt profile, she disclosed that 1.3 trillion naira has been released for capital expenditure. An economic policy analyst, Johnson Chukwu, emphasized that the economy will remain on the growth path following the introduction of some programs and policies by government.
The major thing we have to realize that the current fiscal framework requires a lot of drastic changes, such that we need to get to a point where the government will pay the debt service and still have some headroom for capital expenditure. I'm quite happy that the government has brought in the concept of concession of some of the highways, restoring tolls, such that the revenue from the use of the roads can be used to maintain them. And now with this passage of the Petroleum Industry Act and being signed into law, I also want to believe the government will consider the idea of eliminating subsidies, particularly subsidies that are tied to consumption, so that we will reduce some of the expenditure the government is incurring.
He implored managers of the economy to keep focusing on development of infrastructure. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Well, thank you, Kunle, for that business package. And up ahead is newspaper review.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Atobi is with us on the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kyria.
Bayo, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Now, let's go straight to the Daily Trust newspaper. Banditry group asks Buhari to declare state of emergency in Zamfara state. That's on page 8. Fear of closure as federal government begins inspection of 54 car assembly plants. That's on page 18. Over 100,000 people killed, 2,600 Boko Haram members surrendered in Borno. That's according to the governor, Zulum. It's on page 4. The lead story on the Daily Trust, why NDA security was compromised. 4 adders to that, bandits live peacefully near academy. Majority of troops posted elsewhere. Soldiers on guard mysteriously fell asleep. Invasion, a huge embarrassment. That's according to experts. The photo story there is of the NDA itself, because that's the premises of the Nigerian Defense Academy in Kaduna. And below that, we have PDP crisis. After court order, 2 deputies claim secondary seat. That's on page 29. At the bottom of Daily Trust, Team Nigeria dazzles at Tokyo Paralympics opening ceremony. That's on page 39. Southeast no longer safe to hold delegates conference. NUJ cries out. That's on page 4. Kinsley.
Okay, we also take a look at the Punch newspaper. Now, the lead story of the Punch is obviously on the security breach that occurred at the NDA yesterday in Kaduna. Outrage as uniform-wearing gunmen invade NDA and errant officers to face trial. Terrorists in army uniform subdue military officers, kill 2, abduct 1. Our security architecture was compromised, says Nigerian Defense Academy. It's terrible, a big embarrassment to the nation. ACF, that's Arewa Consultative Forum, and SOCAPU, that's the Southern Kaduna People's Union, and others lament. Now, above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, you have the following headlines. PIA, government can sell NNPC shares to individuals, says Kiari. PDP splits as 2 chairmen emerge. Wike and Secondos divide party officers. Anti-Secondos faction fixes emergency net meeting for Friday. Protest at PDP headquarters. Concession to leave $1 billion loan for farm. That's a claim by aviation workers. And then 2 earpieces there. South Africa, Namibia, and Nigeria top global unemployment rates, according to a report. RAMFAC, that's the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, vows to complete revenue formula review this year. The photographs there on the front page, of course, the social media had the videos of the same still shots. Says consultants and other senior doctors storm Saudi Arabia Recruitment Center. Another holds Thursday. Consultants, that's medical consultants, and other senior doctors storm Saudi Arabia Recruitment Center. Another holds Thursday. Soldier dies in Army Detention Center. Widow demands probe. Zulum defends Boko Haram members' reintegration. Ex-soldier with 8 wives and 50 children arrested with 3 kilogram skunk. Ex-soldier with 8 wives and 50 children arrested with 3 kilogram skunk. 28 states with storage facilities get vaccine doses. FCTA, that's Federal Capital Territory Administration, meets Abuja indigents, promises relocation. 2022 budget, health, defense, transport, and works get highest capital allocations. These are still proposals, by the way. Payo.
Thank you. Well, let's start with the unfortunate development at the Nigerian Defense Academy, Kaduna, where gunmen wearing a military uniform broke into the academy at 1 a.m. Tuesday. Apparently, because they were wearing military uniform, they caught officers on guard and went straight to the officers' quarters and killed a lieutenant commander, a flight lieutenant, and also injured a second lieutenant. Another major, who has now been declared missing, was apparently abducted. The Punch reports that errant personnel have been complicit because for the embarrassing invasion of the academy, and they are likely to be court-martialed. The criminals were kitted in military camouflage, and therefore they forced their way into the academy and went straight to the quarters. Spokesman for the academy says that the 1 div of the Nigerian Army and the Air Force Training Command have launched a manhunt for the attackers. The NDA is located opposite the Federal College of Forestry and Mechanization, where 39 students, you will recall, were abducted last March. Well, there's this concern about wearing a uniform of service security officers is becoming very rampant. You have criminals wearing military uniform, criminals wearing police uniform, criminals wearing civil defense uniform and committing atrocities. Is it legal for persons who don't belong to those services to wear uniform, especially that it is being used as a camouflage to commit crime?
It certainly cannot be legal, Bayo. I mean, it's a rhetorical question I know you are asking. If you don't belong to the services, then you cannot put on their uniforms. If you do that, then that will be impersonation. A few persons have been arrested in the past, but the ease with which these criminal elements, whether Boko Haram terrorists, now kidnappers or bandits, or even sometimes, you know, those who have now become, by comparison, small-time armed robbers, the ease with which they procure military fatigues is something that is worrisome. But in the particular case of the attack on the NDA, which has been appropriately described as an embarrassment, I don't know what the sentry duties are at the NDA, but if you found persons wearing military fatigues or camouflage or even plain military uniforms at that awkward hour, there should be some interrogation. Who are you? Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? If there were no patrols and you were not aware that your colleagues were to be on foot patrol at that material time, and you saw them entering your premises under your sentry, basic questions ought to have been asked.
The question is, if you saw them, was anybody there? As you said, was there any person mounted there as a sentry personnel to be able to monitor movements of people in that environment during odd hours? You know, as rightly said, camouflage is a fabric. It's all over the place. It's in the market. You know, I wonder why it is so easy to procure.
Yes.
It's all over the place. People even wear it as fashion. You know. Yes, I've seen occasions where military men will, you know, arrest somebody on the street to say, look, why are you putting on this camouflage? But it's no longer there as it used to be.
And people who have said that it's their fundamental human right
to wear it. So that's the point. The criminals wear it because it's an easy access to their criminality.
So
I mean, if you mount on the road with a police uniform and flag down a vehicle, the driver will stop, obviously. You know, will stop. Then, of course, you now do what you have to do as a criminal. It's really unfair.
Governor Babagana Zulum has raised an alarm. He says that 10% of Borno population cannot be accounted for. He explains that going by the 2006 census, Borno, with a population of about 4.2 million, 420,000 of such persons now cannot be accounted for. They are missing. This is a consequence of the insurgency war that has been going on since 2009. Governor Zulum says that insurgency has killed over 100,000 persons, and also it has left 50,000 as orphans and widows. The governor, who spoke to the media after visiting the president and briefing him, says that there's need to capitalize on the surrender of the insurgents, because if we don't do so, we'll be breeding a generation of AK-47 carrying children, and that will be a threat to society. He pointed out specifically that among those who were surrendering, there are those who had 2 wives, 3 wives, and some of them have 10 children. These children are well trained in the manner of AK-47, and it is a generation. He says it is necessary to involve the federal government to resolve the issue, that is the issue of granting amnesty to those who are surrendering.
Well, that's the topic we're having for our conversation segment today. That's the radicalization as well as reabsorption and reintegration of so-called repentant Boko Haram terrorists. But there is the photographs also on the front page of the Punch, which saw those photographs a while ago, showing medical consultants and other senior doctors storming the Saudi Arabia recruitment center, with the indication that another recruitment exercise probably will be holding on Thursday. I'm sure you must have seen the video that went viral yesterday. One of the interviewees, who's a medical personnel, said, of course, she was inducted in 2011. That's around about 10 years or so ago. And that her shock was that when she got there at the Sheraton Hotel here in Abuja, she saw, her consultant lecturer also at the recruitment center, seeking to get out of the shores of the country.
she said that that's the shock of her life, because she didn't believe that such personnel should be seeking to work elsewhere, outside Nigeria. One of them too, Kingsley, did also say that, look, the part of the issue, with the current situation in the medical practice in Nigeria is that you come to a hospital, you don't even find basic tools to work with, that he personally will use his own money to buy things that he needs, because of the patients, right? And that has continued over time, that he can't bear it anymore. And that is why he really wants to jet out, so he can make life more meaningful.
It's very sad. And in fact, if we relate that now, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has recorded 565 new COVID cases for yesterday. Lagos had 205, Rivers 73, Ondo 63, FCT 53. Ekiti had 37, Delta 24, and Edo 20. And in Edo State, the Edo State government, with effect from second week of September, says that it shall be compulsory to present a certificate of COVID-19 vaccination for entry into large gatherings. Such large gatherings, according to Governor Obaseki, include churches, mosques, banks, weddings, and obitos, that is burials. The governor says that this measure has become necessary because the third wave of COVID-19, especially that 96% of Delta infected have been found to be persons who have not been vaccinated.
But what is the rationale in that? Have they been able to ramp up vaccination in Edo State? People who have, family affairs like weddings, that they have to attend and all of that, So how could you now say, look, you have to present a certificate of vaccination before you can attend a church and so on? How many people have been vaccinated in vaccine? How much of the doses does the state have to be able to, vaccinate a number of people, a good number of people in the state? I mean, for you to say that it's now a law that you don't attend any function without having the certificate, for me, I don't know how practicable that's going to be.
Well, it's not a law. It's a directive. It's part of the measures to ensure that there is a curtailment of the spread, of the continued spread of COVID-19. It says large gathering. The state is due to begin the scheduled round of vaccinations, having received, I believe, its own consignment from the Primary Healthcare Development Agency. So it's the percentage that is crucial. It is not just in Edo State. I mean, in most urban centers in Nigeria, people are just recklessly careless about observing the simple protocols that ordinarily will help stop the spread of coronavirus. But gentlemen, I want to return to this subject of consultants and other senior doctors storming Saudi Arabia Recruitment Center. This is also, again, another national embarrassment. And one hasn't heard or read any reaction from any government authority with regard to what's happening. One question to ask is, does Saudi Arabia have a recruitment agency or center in Nigeria? That's to say, is Saudi Arabia as an embassy running a business in Nigeria? Which, of course, will be contrary to the rule on consular operations. Who, assuming Saudi Arabia doesn't have a recruitment agency in Nigeria, who is conducting this recruitment? Does that person who is conducting the recruitment have a recruiter's license for this purpose? I agree.
These are critical questions.
I agree that there's mobility of labor. You can go wherever you want to go. But to do it right in your face and to say virtually to hell with you and whatever you stand for you to come and purport to be recruiting people, professionals or otherwise, you must have a recruiter's license. But who is undertaking this? Assume, for instance, somebody else were to come. We want to catch them young. We'll go to secondary schools and say that we are from abroad. Every person in JSS 3, every person in JSS 2. Do you want to go to so-and-so country? I'm sure they will say, oh, yes. Then you begin to recruit them.
The point is, does our law recognize the aspect of having a recruitment license?
It does.
Because one thing is certain,
does.
Even students, Nigerian students who go abroad to for different schools, they have people who recruit them here. Do they have a license to do that? I don't know. I don't know.
Can I quickly draw attention to another flash warning that has been provided by NIMET? It says that 34 states of the Federation are likely to be flooded in the next 3 days. And if we look at the profile that is being provided, all the states of the Northwest, all the states of the South-South, all the states of North Central except Nasarawa, all the states of Northeast except Gombe, and all the states of Southwest except Osun and Ekiti will be flooded in the next 3 days. So, to be forewarned, they say, is to be forearmed.
That's right. Bayo, we'd like to thank you for being around. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with our principal topic for discussion, which is on the radicalization or reintegration of repentant Boko Haram terrorists.
Firstly, safety. I will ensure that my family members and loved ones are safe.
I will try as much as possible not to get involved.
We should call the nearest police station.
I will alert my family, my friends, my neighbors in that vicinity that this is what is happening.
Who wins the star prize of 1 million naira in the ongoing Peace Nigeria Challenge, powered by Ask Nigeria in partnership with National Council for Arts and Culture, NTAC, Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, and Star Times. Unity Challenge Nigeria, stronger together.
See, nurse, she's saying she feels unwell, despite my efforts to practice good hygiene.
Mom says washing hands to keep the germs away.
Washing hands is good, but surfaces can also have germs, and you shouldn't use just anything for cleaning them. Use Jig. Jig's formula has been scientifically proven to stay active for longer, giving you whitening and germ kill protection on a variety of surfaces. Disinfect to protect, just Jig it. Endorsed by National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Since coming into office in 2015, the Buhari administration has recorded unprecedented achievements in all sectors, especially in the provision of infrastructure, which is the key to economic growth. Never in the history of this country has any administration done so much with so little. I recall that when this administration came into office, the price of crude oil, which provides for 80% of Nigeria's budgetary revenues and 95% of foreign exchange earning, dropped drastically, thus reducing the amount of resources available to the federal government. In spite of this, the administration has continued apace with massive infrastructure developments.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA network.
Worthy of note is the firepower by the military to checkmate and nip these activities in the bud, but the hydra-headed monster still resurfaces over time. Many would not forget in a hurry the killings, displacements, and disruption of livelihoods in the areas affected, especially the northeast and other parts of the country, which some are still yet to overcome. In 2016, the federal government of Nigeria, through the Defense Headquarters, inaugurated the Operation Safe Corridor, which is meant to be a counter-insurgency approach aimed at rehabilitating low-risk repentant Boko Haram fighters and reintegrate them back into the society. The rehabilitation program involves vocational training, access to de-radicalization and civic programs. Since then, Nigeria has continually recorded more number of repentant Boko Haram ready to be rehabilitated and reintegrated back into the society. Through the 16-week Operation Safe Corridor course, the government hopes to help low-risk defectors live again in the communities they left behind by teaching them to let go of extremist ideals. The repentant fighters undergo a profiling process and appear before a judicial panel to provide testimonies in order to help the military determine their level of radicalization. The program is also a soft strike at the terror group, an attempt to frustrate recruiting activities and encourage more foot soldiers to surrender. However, many have expressed their reservations about it, calling for the reformation of the Operation Safe Corridor, saying successful reintegration depends on the factors themselves and the towns being asked to accept them, even as they struggle to heal, which will require deep dialogue and cooperation.
I don't subscribe to the idea of saying forget about people who are surrendering, all of them are criminals and the rest of it. What we need to do is to have a clearly defined national policy on how we deal with this, to ensure that everybody is sanitized, so to speak, before they are introduced into the society.
As more ex-Boko Haram fighters express willingness to surrender and be reintegrated to the society, what is the level of acceptance from their communities after the devastating activities of the group? How sincere are these repentant militants? These are some questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly. Thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background. Now, joining us to discuss this issue, we'd like to welcome our regular guest, who is a security analyst, Dr. Kabir Adamu, of course, with specialization in security risk management. Dr. Kabir, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning.
Okay. Kirian?
All right, and we have joining us from our Maiduguri studio is Professor of Sociolinguistics and International Relations and Dean, Borno Concerned Citizens, Khalifa Dikwa. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Kingsley Osadolo and Kirian Omayo.
Thank you indeed, and of course also in Maiduguri studio is a barrister at law and the Borno State Civilian Joint Task Force JTF legal advisor, Jibrin Gunda. Jibrin Gunda, it's good to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kirian and Kingsley.
All right, gentlemen, once again, a pleasure to have you join us for today's conversation, which we should appropriately begin from Maiduguri, where our two guests were just introduced a while ago by my colleague Kirian. But Jibrin Gunda, of course, you are the civilian JTF. What do we know at this time as to why many more Boko Haram terrorists in very large numbers, we understand, and that's again unusual from what we do know. Why are they currently surrendering to the authorities? They appear to be laying down their arms. What's happening?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. Actually, what is actually happening is that those who are in the bush, the terrorists, at all time, most of them did not want to be in the bush, but they were forced by circumstances. And with the recent killing of their commander, that's Abubakar Shekau, and the killing of most of their top commanders, gave them the opportunity to find their ways out of their captivity, because most of those terrorists were observed or were forcefully observed into this terrorism, and they find it very difficult to leave the enclave. So once you attempted to leave the enclaves, as disclosed by most of those apprehended, then definitely you will be summarily, no matter how many of you, will be killed instantly by their leaders. But with the coming and killing of their leader, Abubakar Shekau, and their top commanders, and the arrest of most of their commanders, then gave them the opportunity. Those who were not actually Boko Haram terrorists, those who were conscripted, were always looking for an opportunity to come out. So this particular event gave them the opportunity to find themselves out, as been revealed by most of them. In fact, most of these terrorists are not much more deep into the bush, but they cannot come out because those terrorists have stations, people to be guarding them, watching them all along, so that they may not leave the enclave. So with this opportunity now, it has given them a good advantage and sort of how to escape and surrender themselves. Some of the surrendered were organized, but some were not organized because they have been coming out in piecemeal. That shows to you that whoever among them, those who are not deep-dreaded into this terrorism, at the slightest opportunity they have, then they will find their way out and surrender. Yes.
All right, thank you. And we'll remain in Maiduguri, and let's get also the perspective of Khalifa Dikwa on why it is a mass surrendering of Boko Haram terrorists. And of course, as a Borno Concerned Citizens member, how are citizens of Borno State taking this surrender? Of course, I know you are in touch with many families, and of course, the entire the citizens of Borno State. How are they taking this surrender? Are they really happy the fact that their kids and kins who were perhaps forced to be part of Boko Haram terrorists are surrendering?
Nigerian, actually, there's a little bit of both. The thing is, because I was one of those who have been appealing to them to surrender, and I had media program weekly just to support the governor, who himself said this thing has to end because the governor was out. Professor Bana Zulum was out to just make sure that our people return to their ancestral home. And I was out, completely out, along with the military just to campaign. I was able to tell them that this particular ideology, the intolerant and terrorist, ruthless ideology, was a creation of the Caucasian intelligence. It was created by the Western intelligence and imposed on countries with resources. And therefore, Nigeria was one of the countries that being regarded as existential threat to certain colonial powers. That was what I kept saying since independence. And therefore, to your question is that it is not easy, but each of us is directly or indirectly affected. One of them, I lost my brothers from the same parents, uncles, nephews, and nieces, and so on. And again, this thing had to happen. The days were up, had to happen. But to say people that are quick, they are very quick in condemning this thing. I was also condemning it 6 months ago, and I said it was wrong to say that within very short time you think that somebody who had been drugged for a long time to be normal with other people, and you let them to get into the society. They themselves were not safe because nobody will trust them and so on at that time. And this particular one, it is going to be more serious, and it is not going to be immediate. The profiling will be there. The classification, the categorization into the difference. That is one, those conscripted by force, those who are abducted and kidnapped as human shields, those who are real rascals, killers, and so on. This is one of the measures that I know Dr. Kabiru Adamu will expatiate better. And the thing is, we have to stop it and say that today our people in the rural areas are now farming, unlike in other places. And again, a little background to it. Prior to the beginning of insurgency, I was the one who warned the federal government at that time that a particular insurgency was planned for it, because I stumbled on the classified documents when I was a student in Paris at that time. But they didn't heed my advice. Actually, those terrorists or Boko Haram within the government were actually harassing me for just helping the country to be ready. And they went ahead as government to weaken our military, to weaken our secret service, to weaken our police, by retiring the expert hands among them. Overnight, arbitrarily, they retired them just for a flimsy excuse that they held positions like military administrators, ADC, as if those positions were criminalizing. That was a mere excuse. And then what do you do with a military without a weapon? That particular government, again, moved the weapons, the heavy weaponry, from the northeast, particularly northern Borno, to southern part of the country, particularly Lagos barracks, where some of them exploded and killed scores of it. And that just put it again, that people should be able to understand that it has to happen. And that particular scenario, that this insurgency ideology is different, the difference of name. It is the same as Al-Shabaab, the same as Taliban, the same as Al-Qaeda, the same as WIFA. It has to do with money, drugs, weapon, and deceit in the name of ethno-religious religion. Thank you.
Professor Khalifa Dikwa, thank you for your opening comments. We'll return to you, gentlemen, in Maiduguri Network Center. Let's come back now to Abuja studios. Dr. Kabir Adamu, of course, you are here with us in the Abuja studios. We've taken you from our from our Maiduguri Network Center, where you have, of course, spent a great deal of time as part of your security risk management work. Listening to Jibrin Gunda, who is the legal advisor of the civilian JTF, now he says that what we are seeing, these are fringe conscripts of Boko Haram, according to him, who are taking the opportunity of the elimination of the Boko Haram commander and several other lieutenants. They're taking advantage of the absence of the organizational structure to disappear from the ranks of Boko Haram, but that the hardcore terrorists remain, in his opinion, deep in the forest. And those ones are not just surrendering yet. What is your reading of the situation, and what else should we know?
Yes, a little bit of what he said is what I'm also hearing. I'll only add that there are other factors at play. Not necessarily different from what he has said, but that may have added to the dynamics that have created where we are at the moment. One factor is the reorganization of ISWAP, that is Islamic State in West Africa province. We have to remember that it was a surge by that group that led to the death of Abubakar Shekau. That surge was reinforced by adherents or members of that group that came in from Libya. Now, after the death of Shekau, that group restructured, and from what we had, created about 4 what I would call protectorates within the Borno region, the Lake Chad Basin actually. And each of those protectorates was given to a commander. Now what they did after that is to go after members of the Jamaat al-Ahl Sunnah lil-Dawat wal Jihad or Boko Haram and give them the option. Either you join us or you go back to the Nigerian military with a narrative that if you go back to the Nigerian military, they're going to kill you. And so what we don't know, and perhaps this is where the legal advisor's statement comes in, they chose to go back to the Nigerian military and, you know, perhaps test what ISWAP told them would happen. And incidentally, that didn't happen. They were received by the Nigerian military, and so that encouraged others to also come in. The third factor, which is absolutely important, is the increased interdiction attacks by the Nigerian military under Operation Hadinkai. That played a factor too. What it did is to effectively block the supply channels of these groups. And so their camps, living conditions in the camps became more difficult. Now add that to the first factor, which is the absence of commanders. There was no direction, as it were. They have a challenge, no supplies in terms of food, medicine, all the normal things they would need to keep the camp going. It became a bit difficult for them. And so this combination of these three factors appears to have led to that, what we saw. Now, from my point of view, in terms of risk management, what kind of surprised me is why we were not ready as a country for something that we've been wanting. As far back as 2014, if I remember well, under former President Goodluck Jonathan, we did go to the United Nations to present our counter-terrorism approach. And under that counter-terrorism approach, there was this component for what we call CVE, countering violent extremism. And under that, there was the de-radicalization and counter-radicalization components. So we had a vision. And then all of a sudden, that vision is materializing. And then, as it were, we weren't ready to make good use of what we actually wanted. And so the kind of responses I saw from several persons, including, unfortunately, a senator from that region, criticizing the development, perhaps because he didn't understand the dynamics and what was the objective of the program. It made one element that all along during the implementation of Operation Safe Corridor become obvious, and that is the criticisms from the local community. Perhaps in the course of the conversation, we can talk about the importance of strategic communication in a counterinsurgency operation and why the types of criticism against such developments like what we're discussing is counterproductive.
All right, thank you. Now we are being joined by Professor Benjamin Ehige. Professor Ehige is of the Psychologist Department, University of Ibadan. Prof, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Prof, let's get your own perspective as to the fact that the nation is now handling the issue of over 2,600 Boko Haram terrorists who have willingly surrendered to the nation. What's your perspective as to what may have led to their surrendering and how best to think the situation could be managed?
Well, the first issue I may raise is I wouldn't know the extent to which it has been ascertained whether or not they are genuinely surrendering, or there are some hindering circumstances that is compelling them temporarily to surrender. I think that has to be ascertained. There has to be a critical analysis of the decision that has been made, supposed decision that has been made in terms of surrendering. That being what it is, but ordinarily, it will require one actually conducting a scientific or empirical research by interacting with those who claim, pardon me saying the word claim, who claim to have surrendered. There's a need to interact with them, to ask them what circumstances led to this, their surrendering, so that we'll be double sure that they have deliberately surrendered. But ordinarily, from an outsider point of view, comparing before, pre and now, one would want to know what are the issues, what are the circumstances that might have arisen before now and now that they are coming in mass, surrendering. Well, one critical thing one might say is the loss of their leader. And that brings to question maybe the leadership structure, the leadership composition. Is there a valid leadership with the Boko Haram now? Is there a reliable, dependable leadership with the Boko Haram? Do the people still trust the leadership that they are strong enough to protect them? Are there threats on them suggesting that they might not be able to withstand whatever circumstances or anti-actions that might be presented or posed against them, which is now threatening their existence, making them to surrender? Or is it likely that their standard of living is diminishing gradually? Their sources of income and sources of empowerment is reducing? Is it likely that they no longer have access to weapons? Has the government of Nigeria been able to penetrate into all the reinforcers, encouraging them to be membership and to retain their membership in that Boko Haram? These are issues which are begging for answers. But in all, I will suggest that the Nigerian government should make effort at undergoing a critical survey, especially qualitative survey, in studying the underlying issues that might have been prevalent in predicting their behavior. We need to hear from them what is responsible. It is then we can hold strongly to whatever reasons they will present as scientific evidence of the justification for their returning. That is my view.
Okay, Professor Egie, thank you very much there for your initial comments. We'll come back to you at our Ibadan Network Center. Just before we return to Maiduguri, I just would like Dr. Kabir Adamo to clarify this. Well, the point has been made about the apparent disorganization in the leadership of Boko Haram following the publicized suicide of Shekau, who was their widely recognized leader. There was also another of those leaders of a faction, Al-Banawi. Is he still around, or does he still have the capacity or capability to rally the terrorists? And therefore, what we are seeing now as the disorganization might just be perhaps a temporary phase.
So this is my greatest concern, that those that are driving the counter-insurgency operations don't get carried away by this surrendering. That the other side, that is the Islamic State in West Africa province, like I mentioned earlier on, is reorganizing. And not only reorganizing, it has formed 4 protectorates. And that means it's planning further into the future. And interestingly, it's exerting influence within those protectorates. Now, when I say protectorates, I'm talking of administrative areas that it has drawn up to say this is what, if we succeed in our ambition in establishing a caliphate, this is what a region would look like. So they are attempting to exact influence in those regions. It's in early stages, depending on how especially Operation Hatinkai, respond to those developments, then they could deny them. Then very interestingly, and this is also what keeps me awake at night, they are making moves to establish some form of partnership with the gunmen that are operating in the Northwest. So clearly they are looking ahead into the future. At the same time, we're seeing their footprints in Cameroon, in Niger, as well as in Chad. So clearly they do have a very ambitious sort of objective. Now let's take ourselves to the letter publication by President Buhari in the Financial Times, I think about 2 weeks ago or thereabout, where he drew the world's attention to this particular development, the fact that jihadist groups are expanding in the Sahel region, of course, including northern Nigeria. So yes, the surrendering is there, but then we should also look at this other aspect where ISWAP, like you mentioned, under different leadership. Unfortunately, I have not been able to keep track with the change in leadership. They've been changing their leadership quite frequently. Even after Shekau's death, they changed their leadership. And so they do have a leadership structure, and that leadership structure is closely aligned to the international group, IS.
They have a franchise.
Exactly.
And that brings to the point, I want to get Jibrin Gunda to come in here. You've just listened to Dr. Kabir Adamu here in the studio, raising some very pertinent points, as well as Professor Benjamin Ehige. These points have raised concerns as to what may have led to the mass surrendering of these terrorists. And shortly before now, Khalifa has also talked about the issue of categorization and the profiling of those who have surrendered. Now, contextualize this, based on what you told us earlier on. Do you think that the categorization and profiling of these terrorists could lead to understanding the main reason why they have surrendered? Because one said that, look, it could be a temporary surrendering whereby they could also return to base, based on what we have just learned from Dr. Kabir, that there's a kind of expansionist program of jihadists in the Sahel region.
Well, thank you very much. I think I have heard all these comments, but what I will add further is that all those who have been surrendering, if you take a closer look of those surrendering, they are not among the high-profile terrorists. Most of them, as I earlier said, are the conscript, those who are abducted from various communities, then were forced to be with them. And they were unable to live the enclaves because of the close supervision. Quite all right, most of them, we have been involved in this thing right from 2009 to date. Most of what is happening are those surrendering. After intensive questioning, you come to know that they will be telling you that, look, one factor is that now they have the liberty, they have the opportunity to leave that enclave. That's number one. The second is that it's becoming difficult for them, even before. Not all of them has the direct access of getting essential means of living. So it becomes difficult for them now to get food, to get necessary supplies, unlike before, when their structures were there. So this one now is one of the reasons. Another reason that most of them said previously, when they are within their enclaves, anytime the military is coming, they fear the Air Force very seriously. So anytime the Air Force is coming, before Alpha jets, they will hear the noise, they will hear that a jet is coming, so they will all take cover. But recently what they have been saying is that without any interest, they don't know where this firing and bombs dropping on them. So this one now has caused a lot of concern for them, and it has taken out most of their high-profile commanders. That one now has reduced the chances of the close marking they are having on them, because most of those conscripts did not want to be with the terrorists, but they were forced by circumstance. So these factors now combining made most of them, but most of those coming out now clearly telling you that they are not, none of the high-profile members of the terrorists have surrendered, except the chief bomb maker of Boko Haram, not Iswap. Himself, he is their commander, overall commander of those preparing EIDs for them, alone who is about 20 or so of his lieutenants have quite all right surrendered. This one now is a very high achievement, and if they can properly be interrogated, then they will shed more light. Because based on what they said, most of those top commanders preventing them were taken out by the Air Force. Particularly, as one of them said, there was one strike that took out about their top commanders who were in a convoy of about 8 vehicles. Most of them were taken out. And those commanders were all the one responsible for taking or making all attacks on communities, right from Dambua coming up to the northern Borno axis. So once with the elimination of this group of core commanders, at least we have had a breathing space where they don't have the capability of mounting or assembling to come and mount a serious attack on a given community. They can come out maybe in piecemeal, in bit, but all their attempt, they are looking for food, looking for necessary supplies so that they can quickly rush back into the bush so that they cannot be spotted. Since somebody have talked about Al-Barnawi, this Al-Barnawi, he himself, as we had, have been encouraging some of the non-high profiles to come out and surrender because he himself has been displaced. Because with the reason, as Dr. Kabir has said, with the creation of these enclaves, division into 4, we had that they have appointed other set of commanders right from Syria or from Iraq to take over, and that's what led to the displacement of Al-Barnawi and some of their commanders. So there are some infighting within them, which makes them to be very unstable and very, very skeptical. And most of them now are starting redrawing their plans as what to do. But their concern, major concern, is that will they now be accepted? Because on many occasions, travelers will be telling you, we met these terrorists. They will tell us, now our game is over. But how are we going to be accepted? Will you forgive us? This is where the issue of safe corridor will come into play. Initially, I have attended a lot of seminars on this in Abuja and other places. But initially, some people, a lot of people were skeptical. It is so because at a stage, some people, those terrorists who surrendered, they were kept rehabilitated. Particularly the most dangerous one among them are the females who still have their loyalty to their husbands. But about 24 or 48 of them were once kept in Maiduguri. They were rehabilitated. One will be thinking that if you allow them, they will directly go to their families. But our dismay, all of them went back to the bush. But the core problem of these women and others is that by the time they went back to the bush, they will come to find out that most of their husbands that they want were eliminated. So these are the sum of the factors that will make them very difficult for them to continue staying. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks a lot, Jibrin, for the insight that you are providing. But there's one line that we will interrogate further on in the course of the conversation. But I just, again, would like us to probably get a wider view of the repentance and surrender of, shall we now say, the fringe conscripts of Boko Haram terrorists. 3 states in the northeast were said to have been heavily impacted by Boko Haram activities. Borno, of course, is the epicenter. Yobe is also there, and Adamawa was also part of it. Now, are we also seeing Boko Haram terrorists, fringe elements, who are surrendering in Yobe and Adamawa states, or is it just a Borno event? Professor Dikwa, what do we know at this time?
Thank you, Kingsley. The thing is, actually, whatever we are going to do, we are eventually going to come to the table in order to negotiate, to have dialogue with the insurgents. And we have to start it somewhere. Those from Colombia stayed in the bush for over 50 years. And eventually they had to come down to discuss. And again, for us, it is a taboo to play double. Those our youngsters know that it is a taboo for anybody from this part of the country to play double, just to be treacherous and deceitful, in the sense that, and again, we dare say that if somebody will just submit the entire family, wives and children and so on, that it is another plus in the sense that within which the military, the other security system will be able to tap and extract a lot of information from them. And secondly, it removes the collateral damage that for which the Air Force had all along been avoiding bombing them. Now that the young ones, the wives and so on, are no longer with them, if they are outside, it is very possible that if they mess up with our military again, it is very possible that they bomb them. Thirdly, the real secret is that there is a serious, a rock-solid synergy between the military and other security agencies, unlike before. This is the main secret. And thirdly, and fourth, I dare say that it was an ATM in the past. In the past, it was an ATM. There are people who are very good at rapprochement. Any rapprochement, they were against it because it was just like an ATM for them to draw money. They never wanted this thing. And then the media itself, sometimes, these guys are good at a media campaign. And I hate to always share their video because they can tell a lot of lies in it and to make them look bigger and more organized. To me, they remain ragtag, and the military are just being a little bit careful because it is happening among Nigerians, and they are just to avoid collateral damage that military has not been able to even to spray things that eventually they will slip off and then be caught like rats. And if with the surrender of their children and daughters, and if they don't come, eventually the military will take up. And we have a military. Some Nigerians are very good at denigrating our military. The armed forces of Nigeria, our security service, the police, based on the track record in other peace missions abroad. And they remain one of the three best military in the continent. And some of us academics and so on are also good at looking at the negative side of it. And we have to start this somewhere. We invited them, we called them to surrender, to forget about this war. Again, it may be possible that with the launching next Tuesday of the new A29 to Kano, there was any possibility that they will be taken out. That was also psychologically can boost the morale and of the military, that our military had always avoided doing this thing collateral damage. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken more than 2 months to finish this thing. And again, the synergy. Right now, the synergy, as I earlier said, I talked to the people of Niger, to northern Cameroon, to Chad, even before coming. Our people are now going back, they are farming a relative peace in the territories. And therefore, having a portion, a part of it, is enough to gather enough information. And it is an opening that if these ones are treated well, treated in the sense that nobody will agree that they be allowed to go back without going through the profiling and so on, possibly keep them in another country, far from those who were from the victims. I earlier said we were victims of so on. But if God, who created us, forgives us for trespassing so many things, what are we not to forgive in the process? So by the time our people return, they all return to their ancestral homes. Gradually, people will tend to forget. But it is not easy for anybody to see a person who killed your brother or your relative or your father and so on, starting with his own, because of the drugs, that disorienting LSD drug did not even spare their own parents. They started killing their own parents. And the ideology was that they were taught, they were dictated, and therefore the commander, the word of the commander must be carried out. Even if it is fire, they will go in, executed before they look at their, because these commanders are now disgruntled. They are no longer the same. They are no longer as boastful.
Thank you very much indeed for your analysis. And actually, towards the end of his comments, he talked about how can we, pardon those who killed your parents, those who killed your relatives, and what have you. But we have all agreed, based on the submissions of the guests this morning, that those that are surrendering are those who are conscripted, actually, not really the core Boko Haram members. But if these people surrendering now are part of those who started by killing their own parents, then it's a more serious affair. All right, but let's not go to that. Let's come to you again.
We'll get to it at some point.
Dr. Kabir Adamu, Kinsley asked the question earlier on as to whether those states that were impacted by Boko Haram insurgency are getting people surrendering from Adamawa and Kebbi. Now we'll hear, and Yobe, for instance. We know that Borno, of course, is the epicenter. People are surrendering from that part of the country. Are we having people surrendering in Yobe, Adamawa?
So the database of my consultancy keeps records of these issues, including the surrendering. And what we have seen is a pattern. Borno has recorded more surrendering than any part of the Lake Chad. And specifically, I stand to be corrected in this, 3 local governments appeared at the tops: Bama, Goza, and Konduga local governments. More surrendering occurred in these 3 locations. And it's not difficult to determine why. The basis, if I'll use that word, of especially Jamaat al-Ahl Sunnah lil-Dawati wal-Jihad is in Sambisa Forest. And these are locations that are surrounding Sambisa Forest. And so naturally, they will come out from this forest and the military will
but
take
I thought they have a central command, in Sambisa Forest. Do we have these terrorists in forests in Yobe, or in forests in Adamawa?
So the fringes, Sambisa Forest runs through this state that is where a part of it is, so like northern Adamawa, Madagali, and I think Michika, if I remember well, close to Sambisa Forest. And so you have incidents too occurring in those locations. And you have a little bit of Boko Haram members.
They have bases in those places.
It's one base, but because the forest runs through those states, and including the border area between Borno and Yobe, you now have some of these groups entering there to carry out attacks. And then I haven't recorded, at least in my database, in Adamawa and Yobe, that type of surrendering. But interestingly, in Cameroon and in Niger, we have seen significant surrendering too, but not as high as in Borno State.
Kirian, I know we'll go to Professor Higie in Ibadan. But while we are still on the military aspect of this, the point was made earlier. Jibrin emphasized that point to say that part of what we are seeing as a causative factor for the fringe elements surrendering has to do with the impact of the interdiction by the Nigerian Air Force and, of course, the Nigerian military, and then, of course, the cooperation amongst the services, which is why a number of the commanders have been taken out, their bases destroyed, X, Y, Z. I'm just wondering, I don't know how we can validate this, because before the change of the service chiefs at the beginning of this year, we used to have on news reports, video clips of sorties carried out by the Nigerian Air Force, destroying camps, and then you will see some of the terrorists scampering out of the points that had been strafed. If those sorties did not result in the surrendering, how come, and assuming that those sorties were the ones that actually took place, how come it's not a factor in the surrender that we are seeing now?
A couple of factors, and it's serious business, but unfortunately, I'm laughing. Professor Khalifa mentioned ATM. I'll call it the political economy of the funding of counterinsurgency in Nigeria. So many stories were reeled, and we're seeing the reality today. Yes, those sorties took place, but one factor that has changed, and I'm very happy that also Professor Khalifa mentioned it, the synergy between security organizations. No matter the number of sorties you drop, if the coordinates of the bases and the camps and the supply routes are not in synergy with what you are doing, then you are just wasting those sorties. So I'm hoping, I do not have that information at my disposal, that the synergy that has improved, and I mean it's on record, the National Security Advisor mentioned this during a recent press briefing, and I'm hoping that that synergy has led to an improvement in targeting by the Nigerian Air Force. What I know for a fact, based on atmospherics that my consultancy is monitoring, is that the living conditions in the camps of these groups have become extremely difficult because they've been blocked.
Okay. Before we go on break, really, let's get a second statement of Professor Benjamin here in Ibadan. Prof, in your opening remarks, you raised an issue concerning the sincerity of purpose of those who are surrendering, whether they are genuine or not. But you have also listened to other guests, including Professor Khalifa Dikwa and Jubin Gunda, as to the nature of this surrendering and the personalities involved in this, which of course have been described as those who are conscripted to be part of Boko Haram and not the core members of this sect. Now, you're a psychologist by training. Now, in the process of de-radicalization of these Nigerians, what should be the process? What are you going to suggest to government as to how to begin this de-radicalization? Because for the essence of this is to ensure that they don't return to the bush again to begin what they were doing. How do you think this can be handled by government of the day? Now that we have them on our hands, there's nothing we can do about it. It's crystal clear that they have surrendered.
Well, it's a welcome development for the surrendering, which is quite encouraging, and applause for that. Well, in terms of how to handle the surrendering, it has to be in two parts. One on the parts of those who are surrendering, and the other is on the part of the community where they emerged. On the part of those who are surrendering, there is the need to carry out psychological analysis of these persons. It has been mentioned before of the profiling of the persons, at least trying to understand some issues, some behavioral dispositions of these people. But considering the facts of what they have passed through, in the first instance, like has been said, it wasn't a voluntary action they took that got them into this act of terrorism. But in the course of belonging, socialization had taken place. And that socialization might have affected seriously their cognitive disposition. And with the lot of killings and deaths running from one destination to the other, it certainly would have affected them psychologically, especially their mental states and their emotional states. Definitely, they would have suffered from trauma. Now, my advice or suggestion, therefore, is that for us to have a good de-radicalization program, there is the need to carry out psychological tests of these persons. And the psychological tests would require adequate analysis of their mental state to discover, to diagnose if they are presently having some psychological disorders. If they are, then it has to be treated, or they have to be treated before we can accept them as people who can now live their normal life. Because the lives they had been living in the forest is not a normal life. And as such, if they are to live a normal life, you have to understand their present state. Emotionally also, they would have been affected. Now, if they voluntarily surrendered, there will be a lot of cognitive activities taking place within them. There will be the feeling of regret. There will be the feeling of depression. There will be the feeling of self-harm, tendency for self-harm, when their conscience starts haunting them of the ills that they have done. So there's the need for an analysis to be carried out. Then emotional dispositions. It would be traumatic to them. It's like they have been brought to reality. There will be the consistent tendency of having a reflection of what they had passed through, what they have done, and possible consequences for their action, especially with religious indoctrination of consequences for such actions. So all this will totally make them not to live a normal life for now. Now, for them to be brought back to the normal state of living, a lot of analysis has to be done, which will now lead to psychotherapeutic intervention into their psyche. And this psychotherapeutic intervention could call for cognitive behavioral therapy, whereby first we have to work on their cognitions, you have to work on their emotions, you have to work on their feelings. Now, apart from this, prior to this time, the lives they have been living has been that of dependency, whereby, in a way, their food is provided for them. What they needed, they are usually provided for them, although not sufficient. But now, with this action of surrendering, they would be expected to live alone or even to live with people. They need to fend for themselves. They need to be empowered economically. And one way they can be empowered economically is by engaging them in vocational training. And for them to be engaged in vocational training, we need to identify their vocational skills. Here again, the psychologists will need to assess each of them so that you can identify their vocational skills. From the result of their vocational skills, you can now begin to part out the type of vocations that they could be trained on. So such training would help them to live independent life. Now, apart from this, after they have left their location for the radicalization program, the camps or wherever they are kept, they are supposed to go back to where they came from, to the community where they came from. That's another challenge. Within them, psychologically, they feel that they have done wrong. Will they be accepted back? In terms of their conscience, will they have that conscience of going back to a place where they have had a lot of destructions? The people they are expected to meet, will they be willing, accepting them back? More so that they've caused a lot of destruction, even physical destructions, apart from human destructions. Now, those physical destructions that have been made, have there been a restoration of such that could, to some extent, reduce the negative effect and negative perception of these people? What about the community we are coming to meet? There is the need for the attitudinal change program to be organized for them, so that they will see these people, these repentants, as actually have repented. And for this to be actualized, I would suggest intermittently, in the course of this radicalization program, representatives from their communities could be brought to the scene, to the location where this de-radicalization program is taking place, so that they will see for themselves and they go back to inform others what they have seen, that actually these people have repented. Then there need to be some community teachings, some community programs that would help the community to reorient their cognition so that they can see and accept these repentant individuals as actually have repented, so that they can accommodate them. Otherwise, if they are sent back to their community and they are not accepted, it could make them to become even more aggressive, that despite the changes they believe that they have engaged in, they are not being accepted. They might even become more violent than they were before, during the time of their terrorist activities. So,
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Benjamin Ahigia, there for your deep analysis. Gentlemen, we're going to have to take a short break now. When we return, we continue with the conversation.
The housing solution we have developed is a multifaceted one. First, we have tried to lead a program to build what we think will be an acceptable and hopefully affordable housing type based on surveys we did in 2015-2016 and construction that started in 2017. And that's going on in 34 states as the National Housing Program.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
A new edition of TV Guide is out exclusively with Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
Since assuming office, our rescue administration has pursued the path of peace and reconciliation and restored confidence among people of different ethnic, religious, and political persuasions. Peace is back on the plateau. We are building world-class infrastructure in roads and opening up opportunities for innovation.
The edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from entertainment, economy, sports, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up a copy and keep abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, The Sports Parliament. Revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
You're welcome back and still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to Jibrin Gunda in our Maiduguri Network Center. He's legal advisor of the civilian JTF in Borno State. Jibrin, tell us something. I mean, listening to the analysis by Professor Ahigia and the various steps that ordinarily should be taken both for the repentant terrorists and the communities into which they might be reintegrated. Right now, what is the mood amongst community members? Yes, it is one thing for government officials and other agents and agencies to be saying, we want to get these persons back, we have debriefed them, we have de-radicalized them. But the former terrorists, they have relatives, and the memory of the havoc wreaked by the organizations, that's to say Boko Haram as an organization, those memories aren't being erased almost immediately. So how much of a challenge is this likely to pose to the reintegration process? And how prepared might stakeholders be to confront these challenges?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinsley. Well, as of now, as you have earlier been saying, Borno State is the epicenter of this BH terrorism. And in fact, all along what the executive governor of Borno State have been saying is not only about the repentant Boko Harams, no, but those who are displaced. First and foremost, those who are displaced must at least be given the little comfort they deserve.
Yes.
The government on its own cannot be shouldering everything. My governor has always been saying government cannot provide everybody with anything, but the basic thing, as we know our communities, we are all rural farmers. In as far as these communities will be able to relocate back to their ancestral home, then they will engage in their agricultural processes that they have been sustaining themselves, then keeping the little animals, which will supplement what they are doing. But the question now is, Mr. Kinsley, how do you take them back? Let me tell you, as I earlier said, I have been facing these challenges right from 2009 to date. It will be very pathetic for you now to know, if you are in Maiduguri, you know the Maiduguri, take you away from Maiduguri now to Damboa, a local government, to within Borno State. It's just about 4 kilometers. Prior to the insurgency, from Maiduguri, what we call Mulay Hospital, then there's immediate community called Dalwa. Apart from Dalwa now, Borno State government is building about 1,000 housing units to make sure that those who are displaced, who are first resettled, give them the little comfort. Apart from Dalwa, there's a proposal for such settlement to be done in a very big place called Blablin. There too, my governor has proposed about 1,000 housing units, at least to give them comfort and to give them sense of belonging. Apart from these places, in between this area, right from Maiduguri to Damboa, prior to this insurgency, we have over 50 to 60 villages where there are various settlements, communities are bumpering, they are doing everything. They sustain themselves. But as of now, you cannot see a single settlement. All these 50 to 60 settlements have been wiped out, have been destroyed. There is no single building. There is no how Borno State government will be able to resettle or to recreate all these villages, give them the little comfort. How do you take them back? You have at least to get shelter for them. And all this heavy burden cannot be undertaken. So once this program will be done, I think the best thing we'll do is that for now, those repentant Boko Haram are being catered, being taken care of in the various rehabilitation centers. Then let the federal government come in, assist the most affected area, particularly Borno State, with the little resources the government is doing. Then we at the federal government to come in at least, okay, let's assess which communities, where and where do we come in at least provide little comfort to those who are there. Once they are there, then this process of reintegration can be there. But in as far as somebody who has been displaced, his ancestral home have been completely been wiped out, then where are you reintegrating these terrorists in, repentant Boko Haram fighters? Where are you taking them? Are you leaving them in the bush? Those villages will have to come out. And categorically speaking, as an indigenous of Borno State, there is no how my government will be able to create all these structures.
You have indeed raised a very pertinent issues concerning reintegration, resettlement of those who have been displaced, and what have you. One other issue raised by our guests in Ibadan is that of skills acquisition for these persons who have now surrendered. And I'll go to Professor Khalifa Dikwa very briefly, sir. But very briefly, sir, how would this process begin? Reintegration, skill acquisition for those individuals who are now who have now surrendered and now about to be reintegrated into the society. Very briefly.
have said it. The campaign should go through the traditional leaders, and then the support from federal government to the state in terms of skills workshops and so on, places and so on. And again, like, this is Nigeria's own. Some people among the elite, sometimes they are irritating in that they don't see anything good in this country. To me, it's the best country. They think that Nigeria is the only country, to me, apart from what happened in other places. Insurgency, the same thing with different names. And Nigeria is the only country with that did not invite the Caucasians to come and do one good thing and destroy 9 others. They did not. It is only Nigerians doing. And these Nigerians, the military under the impeccable leadership of CDS General Lucky Irabo, you have the Chief of Air Staff Amao, the Chief of Army Staff Farouk. These are people who have been in the field. They know the thing. They know it better. And therefore, to me, the carrot, the stick and carrot should be maintained. The stick and carrot should be maintained, that they should bomb them if they refuse to come out. And that they now know that it has nothing to do with religion, because the other time we were invited by the Swiss embassy, there was a district head from Adama who came out and said, among them there were no Muslims and so on. Actually, there is nowhere, no holy scripture that said kill people. They have never seen destructive people like this one. They are so terrible and destructive because they are maniacs. They have been taking these drugs meant for suicide operations. And therefore, I think the way to go is to sustain it, disrupt them. And in order not to filibuster the little advantages that we now have, let us look at the positive side, that we are likely to succeed, and that the funding is no longer coming from outside to them because of the starvation. And those countries are on their own now. They have economic problems themselves. And Nigeria as a country, I would like to say the foreign ministry in particular, if that particular country that sees Nigeria as a threat should be able to invite the ambassador to show disdain that we are not happy about these activities. And therefore, I think the way to go is going to work resettle the IDPs first. Imagine all my villages, including where I was born, in Tikwa, Marti, and so on, completely destroyed. There is nothing, no farmland, no villages,
but
completely destroyed.
Professor Khalifa Dikwa, thank you very much for your points. We're getting pressed now for time. Dr. Kabir Adamu, take this as part of your closing thoughts. Operation Safe Corridor that has been launched, does that Operation Safe Corridor provide the manual for dealing with the situation we have on our hands now of fringe conscripts of Boko Haram surrendering, and how to undertake the various social psychotherapeutic interventions as Professor Ege has indicated? Exactly.
The policy document that outlined its aims, its objectives, is exactly about that, about bringing in someone who has been radicalized, and then at the end of 16 weeks, graduating him and evaluating him before the graduation to determine whether he has renounced that radicalized component that was inherent in him. Unfortunately, the process has been a bit opaque, so we've not been able to evaluate and know whether it's been successful. In this studio, I have previously, and I'll repeat it again, the military needs to take a backseat and allow the other components. If I'm right, there are about 18 ministries, departments, and agencies that are supposed to be involved in Operation Safe Corridor. It shouldn't be the military that we should be seeing its face. Let the other civilian components be the face of Operation Safe Corridor. Now, with specific regard to the question you asked regarding skill acquisition, vocation, that is one of the objectives of Operation Safe Corridor.
Dr. Kabir Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert, we appreciate your contribution this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you indeed for being part of it. Barrister Jibrin Gunda, would like to also thank you for your insight into the program. Thank you indeed. You are the Civilian Joint Task Force legal advisor. Thank you. Of course, Professor Khalifa Dikwa, the International Relations and Dean Borno Concerned Citizens. Thank you also for your contribution this morning. I wish we had time to go more because I know you have more things to tell us this morning. All right. From Ibadan, we had Professor Benjamin Ehige. He is of the Psychology Department, University of Ibadan. All right. So thank you all for being part of the program this morning. Next on Good Morning Nigeria is foreign news.
New Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema has promised to turn around the economy of the southern African country, plagued by colossal debt, and to guarantee real freedom to all Zambians. The former perennial opponent, who promised a new dawn in Zambia, was sworn in before thousands of elated supporters at the Heroes Stadium in Lusaka, as many stayed overnight to witness his inauguration. Several heads of state, but also regional opposition figures, came to greet a smooth political transition on a continent whose recent history has been marked by authoritarian leaders clinging to power for a long time. Now to America, U.S. President Joe Biden has emphasized the 31st August deadline for evacuations, despite previous calls from allies for an extension. U.S. media reports that some American troops have already been withdrawn and at least 70,700 people have been airlifted from Kabul. As it is, the militants have opposed any extension to the evacuation deadline, as the president left open the chance of extending the deadline, saying reaching that goal depends on cooperation from the country's new Taliban rulers. Okay, let's go over now to our sports desk.
It was a day of joy and beautiful presentation of lyrics, rendition of good music,